We're not going to dance around it. For most of human history, a woman's future was written before she could read. Marriage wasn't a choice, it was a transaction. Her labor, domestic, reproductive, emotional, was the currency. And security, that was the prize for playing your role quietly. Let's be clear. Domestic labor was never living. It was survival disguised as virtue. Fast forward to the 1940s through the 1970s, marriage as security was the operating system. Get married, have children, keep the home. Your personal freedom, a luxury you couldn't afford. Your ambitions, they belonged to someone else, but something major changed. Women started getting educated, not just finishing school, real degrees, real credentials. And I'll go a step further, a fact that still makes people uncomfortable. Black women now represent a leading group in educational attainment in America. Not catching up, leading. That's not a footnote. That's the engine of a revolution. Because once you have your own education, your own income, your own future, marriage stops looking like safety and starts looking like a risk, a restriction, a form of bondage dressed up in white lace. And women are saying it out loud now. Not in academic papers, in their lives, in their choices, in the silence where wedding photos used to be. Here's the new reality. A growing number of women are stepping back from traditional marriage and motherhood entirely. Not delaying, stepping back. They're choosing self-determined lives, reclaimed time, boardrooms over bare feet, luxury trips around the world over being trapped in a kitchen that someone else calls home. And no, that's not selfish, that's statistical. Let's talk about the birth rate, because the data is screaming. In 2025, the U.S. fertility rate hit another record low, 53.1 births per 1,000 women. Globally, we're down to about 2.2 children per woman. That's just above replacement level. And dropping. People want to blame the economy, housing costs, childcare. And yes, those are real, but that's not the full story. Let's be crystal clear. Being married or having children has never guaranteed a woman financial security, nor has it ever proven that longevity, happiness, fulfillment, or contentment was part of the marriage equation. The real driver? Women are finally asking, what do I want? Not what their mother wanted, not what their church, culture, or political party wants, what they want. And more, the answer is not a stroller. It's a passport, individual and financial growth. It's a promotion and days with no one else's needs to manage. This isn't a trend. This is a goddamn demographic earthquake. Because when you prioritize higher education and career stability, childbirth gets delayed. And when you delay it long enough, for some women indefinitely, you realize you never actually wanted it. You were just told you did. From the age of 14, my grandmothers, both of them, encouraged me to get to it. Or else by the age of 16, I was going to be called an old maid. I couldn't believe my ears. Forget about my hopes and dreams, just get knocked up, huh? Now, let's get specific about communities, because the data doesn't lie. Among Black women, the shift is unmistakable. For decades, societal norms and limited professional access meant marriage and child rearing were the only safety nets. Now, Black women are earning degrees at higher rates than any other group. They're leading in entrepreneurship. They're redefining success on their own timeline. And that timeline increasingly does not include being a wife or mother by 30 or 40 or ever. That's not bitterness. That's liberation with a spreadsheet. Now, let's look at the setback. Social hurdles are still very real. Lack of paid parental leave, job insecurity. The crushing cost of childcare can exceed rent in most major cities. That's not an accident. That's by design, ladies. Because when childcare costs more than your rent, more than your mortgage, you start doing the math. And the math is unthinkable once you sit with it. You realize I could work 40 hours a week, pay someone else to raise my child, and barely break even. Or I could quit, stay home, become a full-time mother. And at least we're not losing money, but that's if you have a husband or a man that's holding you guys down, 100% handling the bills. But nowadays, even that's not enough sometimes. It's hard to survive with two incomes, let alone one. So, you see, where's the win? That's not a choice. That's a trap. The system isn't just expensive. It's structured to make staying home feel like the only logical decision. Push women out of the workforce, not with a law, but with a calculator. Make childcare so punishing that she volunteers to leave. She tells herself it's temporary. Just until preschool, just until kindergarten, just until, and then years disappear. Promotions vanish. Retirement savings never happen. Her career becomes a memory. Her identity becomes mom. And the machine keeps running because she's on her back or back in the kitchen barefoot, raising the next generation of workers while her own labor is erased from the economy. That's the trap, not a locked door, a slow, expensive, quiet surrender. And more women are finally seeing it for what it is. But guess what's changing? Women are no longer willing to dismantle their lives to accommodate a system that was never built for them. Men never expected women would out-educate or outpace them financially to where we no longer relied on them. From this perspective, women are opting out. Not dramatically or with protests, but oftentimes quiet and decisively. They invest in themselves, travel, and build careers, a life our ancestors could only imagine. We now sleep in and are saying no to proposals on that contract because we can, and yes to our own ambitions. And the birth rate keeps falling. Some will call this a crisis. But crisis for whom? For industries built on cheap domestic labor? For political movements that need a growing population? For men who were raised to believe a wife and children were entitlements? Because for women, this isn't a crisis. This is the first real freedom they've ever had. But then something happened that poured gasoline on the fire. Now, let's change the focus a bit. Let's look at our president and reproductive rights. The Dobbs decision in 2022, engineered by the 3 Supreme Court justices he appointed, didn't just restrict reproductive rights. It sent a message. Women heard it loud and clear. Your body is not your own. Your future is not your own. The state has a claim on your uterus. And the irony is that people in power were betting on this. The president and the pronatalist movement around him, Elon Musk, the Heritage Foundation, the whole machinery, actually believed that taking away reproductive rights would increase birth rates. The logic, if you can call it that, was simple. Block the exit, trap women in pregnancy, force them to become mothers. Project 2025 laid it all out. The administration has since gutted Title X, the federal program that provides birth control to millions of low-income women, and redirected the funds toward fertility education, and infertility training centers. They cut contraception access. They slashed DEI programs. They pushed baby bonuses and motherhood medals for women with 6 or more children, straight out of the Nazi playbook. They thought women would just comply, get pregnant, stay home, and shut the hell up. Instead, the opposite happened. Let me share the data. After Dobbs, reproductive rights increased, not decreased. A massive study analyzing over 1.2 million pregnancies found that overall reproductive rights utilization rose from 20.5% to 22.2% after the ruling. Pharmaceutical reproductive rights, the kind women can get by mail, jumped even higher. Women didn't stop terminating pregnancies. They got smarter, more determined, and more resourceful. They found ways. The bigger story, the story the headlines missed: requests for permanent contraception, tubal ligations, salpingectomies skyrocketed after Dobbs. Young women started walking into doctors' offices and saying, "Tie my tubes. I'm not taking any chances." Not delaying motherhood, canceling it entirely, and still wearing condoms to be extra cautious. Because when you remove the safety net, women stop taking risks. That's not a political opinion, that's being realistic about the consequences. And the math is brutal. The U.S. fertility rate hit 53 births per 1,000 women in 2025, a 23% drop from 2007. Marriage rates: 47% of U.S. households are married couples. 50 years ago, it was 66%. Catholic weddings alone have dropped nearly 60% since 2000. People aren't delaying anymore. They're opting out. So, what did the president's reproductive rights crackdown actually accomplish? The opposite of what he wanted. He wanted more babies. He got fewer. He wanted women trapped. He got women liberated, not because liberation was handed to them, but because the threat was so naked, so undeniable, that they had no choice but to wake the hell up. They wanted us to believe we needed a seat at their table. They never considered we'd build our own. And that brings us back to marriage. Let's be honest about marriage. Historically, it was a contract where women gave up their bodies, their time, their names, and often their dreams in exchange for financial protection. That was the deal. For generations, women were told to prove what they brought to the table. But no one ever asked what the table was bringing them. But when women earn their own money, own their own homes, build their own security, the deal becomes a bad one. Marriage shifts from a necessity to a negotiation. And many women are choosing to walk away from the table entirely. That doesn't mean no one wants partnership. But partnership is not marriage as bondage. It's not domestic labor without pay. It's not sacrificing your career because someone has to stay home with the kids. And more women are realizing they don't have to accept that trade-off anymore. So here's where we are. In 2026, a woman graduating college looks at her options and sees a career path that rewards focus and mobility. A world that still lacks paid parental leave and affordable childcare. A dating pool where domestic labor still falls mostly on women. And a lifetime of freedom on the other side of saying no. What do you think she chooses? The data says herself. Not because she's cold, not because she hates children, but because for the first time in history, she actually has a choice. And she's not going to waste it on a script written by someone else. This is the unspoken exit. Millions of women quietly walking away from the roles they were supposed to play. Not angry, just done. And the birth rate isn't going to recover until the world gives them a reason to come back. And I can tell you right now that 50-50 isn't going to cut it anymore. But with structural support, real partnership, and with a version of unity, this could be possible. Until then, boardrooms, luxury trips, reclaimed time, and for the first time, peace. For generations, women were told marriage was a fair deal. You cook, you clean, you raise the children, you take care of him in and out of bed, and in exchange, he provided. In more recent times, women were doing it all, simultaneously, including working 8 to 12-hour shifts. Under that 50-50 rule, she is or was paying the bills. Women were giving up their names, their bodies, their time, their dreams. For what? For security that could be taken away with a divorce. There has never been anything fair or equal about being a married woman while working outside the home and doing 50-50 and returning home only to do it all alone. Never. Back then, choices were limited. I get it. Women didn't have many choices because they weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts, credit cards, etc. Those days are gone. They see that the government will come for their rights the second it gets the chance. They see that marriage, for all its romantic glow, is still a contract where women do the lion's share of unpaid labor. They see that motherhood is a life sentence of sacrifice and that nobody is coming to help. So, yes, marriage and birth rates are down. Women are choosing themselves. Not because they're selfish, but because women are taking full advantage of their right to choose. And they're not going to waste it on a system that has never, ever served them. It would seem that the president wanted to force women back into the kitchen. Instead, he pushed them into the boardroom, onto the plane, into their own apartments with their own names on the lease. The birth rate is a casualty of a war women didn't start, but finally decided to win. And that's not tragedy. That's consequence. And I'll end with this. You know the question, the one women have been asked forever. What do you bring to the table? As if we're applicants, as if we need to prove our worth. See, what they fail to see is that we've been bringing everything, our bodies, time, labor, dreams, including the table. See, the focus is and always has been the table. What can she place before me? And the trick of knowing is this: everything that was used up, things you use to prepare that table, your bodies, your time, labor, and your dreams, is instantly disregarded, and those things are cut short and ignored so that someone else could eat. We set the table, we cooked the meal, we cleaned up after, and still the question comes down to this very thing every single time. We're not negotiating, auditioning, shrinking ourselves to fit a man's expectations. We've built our own. And on this table, you're going to find passports, not grocery lists, investments and real estate contracts, not permission slips, luxury trips, homes and cars paid in full, not laundry piles, reclaimed time, not lost years. In 2026, I promise you, women are only seeking dynamic partnerships that's functional and beneficial, not 50-50. So when a man asks, what do you bring to the table? The answer is simple. I am the table. Until next time.